Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. In Burundi, authorities believe that the nation is protected from COVID-19 by divine grace, and the discovery of the first 3 cases last week had no impact on everyday life. On the contrary, the government sees it as a new opportunity for God to manifest his power.
We have been told that we must wash our hands to protect ourselves and our customers, but it is God who protects the most.
A few days ago, in front of an audience of several hundred executives of the ruling party, the Secretary General, Evariste Ndayishimiye, reassured the population, saying that God loves Burundi and that there is nothing to fear.
We pray and we believe in God, but you know that Burundian proverb that said that God helps the one who helps himself. It is true, we know that God is almighty, but nobody can just neglect and say that God will spare him from this coronavirus.
Based on divine protection, the government decided that there will be no measures at the moment likely to harm the proper functioning of the normal life of the citizens. In Nigeria, the government announced on Thursday the upcoming release of 2,670 prisoners to ease prisons and limit the spread of the new coronavirus in jails. According to the Nigerian Interior Minister, there are inmates aged 60 and over. Some of them are suffering from serious health problems, while others were sentenced to 3 years or more with less than 6 months to serve. There are also inmates with mental health problems, detainees with a fine option not exceeding 50,000 nairas. According to the Ministry of Justice, 2,600 detainees across the Federation will be released during the lockdown period of COVID-19, as well as 70 offenders in detention in the capital Abuja. They will all receive a presidential pardon on the 10th of April and will be released in the coming weeks by the judicial authorities of the 36 states of the Federation. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, in some markets in Lagos, sellers and buyers who are trying to adapt to lockdown measures are suffering from the disruption of agricultural production chains. Since the announcement of total lockdown on the 31st of March in 3 states of Nigeria, including the state of Lagos, transportation of goods have become an issue, and the price of food staples such as rice, cassava or canned tomatoes has exploded. Essential foods can circulate freely despite movement restrictions. However, some products which are necessary for agricultural production can no longer access farms, and prices fluctuate from day to day. The capital city is also dealing with import-related problems with slowdowns at the port of Lagos. The state of Lagos has put in place a new regulation that requires opening market stalls only every other day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced on Thursday the extension of the lockdown period to curb the spread of COVID-19.
While it is too early to make a definitive analysis of the progression of the disease in South Africa, there is sufficient evidence to show that the lockdown is indeed working. After careful consideration of the available evidence, the National Coronavirus Command Council has decided to extend the nationwide lockdown by a further 2 weeks beyond the initial 21 days. This means that most of the existing lockdown measures will remain in force until the end of April.
The president also announced that he, along with the deputy president and various ministers, will donate 1/3 of their salaries to a coronavirus solidarity fund.
But the struggle against the coronavirus is far from over. We are only at the beginning of a monumental struggle that demands our every resource and our every effort. We cannot relax, and we cannot be complacent. In support of this effort, we have decided that the President, the Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers will each take a 1/3 cut in their salaries for the next 3 months. This portion of their salaries will be donated to the Solidarity Fund. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been speaking to other African leaders about a coordinated Africa continental effort to combat the coronavirus and to support our people and our economies. We have established an African Union COVID-19 Response Fund to mobilize resources necessary to support this effort. This is a difficult time for all of us. Yet the message of Easter is one we carry in our hearts tonight. It is the message of hope, of recovery, and rebirth. As we walk this road together, as we struggle to defeat this pandemic, we remain strong and united and resolved as South Africans.
During his address, the president also acknowledged the sacrifices made by the citizens and pledged to adjust lockdown measures to enable a phased recovery of the economy. In Ivory Coast, the National Security Council dedicated to the coronavirus pandemic announced on Thursday that face masks have become mandatory in the country's capital, Abidjan. Despite the shortage of masks in the country, the National Security Council vowed to ensure production by the local industry and the massive import of masks intended for the use of the populations. The NSC also announced the production of medicines by the local pharmaceutical industry to meet national needs. As more African states strive to limit the spread of the new coronavirus by adopting preventive measures, African Union officials lamented that Africa is struggling to compete with wealthy countries for testing and other equipment needed to curb the spread of the virus. Kwesi Kwartey, deputy president of the AU Commission, cried for help at a press conference in Addis Ababa on Thursday. The head of the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. John Kengasong, who believes African countries are being elbowed out in the quest for commodities to support the entire spectrum of the response, complained about the lack of testing on the continent as well as other essential equipment. Last month, Chinese billionaire Jack Ma had offered 20,000 test kits to each African country, which, according to Mr. Kengasong, had given the African Union some air. The African Union has so far distributed 70,000 screening kits to the member states and intends to provide 100,000 more from next week. In Chad, the military operation launched against the jihadist group Boko Haram in the Lake region killed 52 Chadian soldiers and 1,000 jihadists, according to the Chadian army. The National Army was deployed on the 31st of March and completed its operation on Wednesday. According to the army spokesman, Colonel Azem Aguna, the army successfully drove the jihadists out of its soil and are deep in the territory of Niger and Nigeria, waiting for their troops to take over in the border region. It is the first statistical report of the Operation Bohoma Anger launched by President Idris Deby Itno after the death of 100 Chadian soldiers in a Boko Haram attack on the Bohoma base on March 23rd. Vital Kamerhe, chief of staff to the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, was placed in pre-trial detention on Wednesday evening in Kinshasa Central Prison. Mr. Kamerhe, a 61-year-old former president of the National Assembly, was transferred early in the evening to the Makala Central Prison as part of a massive anti-corruption investigation supposed to mark the renewal of justice in the fight against the impunity of the elites. It is the first time in the history of the country that a president's chief of staff is arrested. In Zambia, the media regulator announced on Thursday the cancellation of the broadcasting license for the country's leading private TV channel, which happened to be the only critical voice of the government. In a statement, the Independent Broadcasting Authority explained that the sanction against Prime Television, which takes effect immediately, is necessary in the interest of public security, peace and order. Launched in 2013, Prime Television, owned by Gerald Shawa, a former journalist with the Public Broadcasting Group, Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, was the only openly critical voice of President Edgar Lungu. The television channel recently refused to run free commercials on the coronavirus pandemic.
Outdoors, there's no problem.
Finally, in Uganda, President Museveni released on Thursday a video in which he shows citizens how to exercise at home under lockdown. The workout video comes after the president banned outdoor exercise in an attempt to limit the spread of the new coronavirus. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.